I'm going to be going down slope here.
And the bottom is in sight. Several fish, numerous fish. Synaphobranchid eels, most likely, and lots of soft sediment. What are they eating? What do those eels eat? I imagine they eat anything that they can find. We saw one earlier on this cruise go pick up a kind of dead organism. It looked like another eel even, and run away with it. So they're probably kind of
Scavengerish, yeah. Actually, yeah, wasn't there video from the Gulf of Mexico, the more recent Gulf of Mexico cruise where one of them grabbed a squid?
I don't know that one.
Hey, you can come down.
Maybe it might not have been a Synaphobranchid. I don't.
Bridge, this is ROV nav. Just wanted to notify you that the vehicles are on the bottom, and I'd like to verify that the center rotation is set around the A-frame.
Should we introduce ourselves?
I was just having the same thought. Go for it, Stephanie.
All right.
Good copy,
This
Bridge.
is Stephanie Bush. I work at the Smithsonian Institution National Museum of Natural History. And we have...
And I'm Cheryl Morrison from the U.S. Geological Survey Leetown Science Center, and I am the biology science lead. And Leslie Sauter, who is the geology lead, is doing a live event right now, but she will be joining us in a little while.
Go around faster.
Should we have the front row intro?
Tilt up so we can see where that...
Yeah, I don't know if they're too busy right now trying to get the dive set up.
We'll wait on that.
We're just about to discuss that with you. We would like a bailout of northeast.
And for everybody just joining, today's dive is on an Intercanyon Ridge, just north of Pamlico Canyon. And
good copy.
So it looks like
we had to abandon our target dive site today because of the conditions out there. We were supposed to do a very deep dive out far into Pamlico Canyon, but we got there and the conditions were just not right at all. So we came in further and picked a new dive site, and we're going to go travel across this Intercanyon Ridge starting at a depth of 1,265 or so. Oh, and Amanda said that going back to the Synaphobranchid eels and what they eat, that they saw one on the Canex cruise with a midwater fish still wiggling in its mouth. So, yeah, I guess they must be
Thank you.
Scavengers and predators.
Scavengers and predators, yeah. I guess in the deep sea, you gotta be flexible with what food you go for.
Mm-hmm. And I see that Amanda Demopoulos from the USGS is on the line here, or on the chat, and maybe if we see lots of sediment, she might call in and tell us about all the exciting things that she sees in her sediment cores that she's done all over the Gulf of Mexico and elsewhere. And she studies the organisms that live in the sediments. And it doesn't look like much from the surface, but there's a lot of biodiversity there.
It's a huge number of organisms that live within the sediments and between the particles.
You can deploy...
so right now we're
hold off on the swing arm.
Calibrating our camera with color, black and white. So you can look at Sirius's view to see D2 right above the bottom. Or on the bottom, actually. I think we did, yeah, we landed. D2 is on the bottom. Sirius is some number of meters above.
So it sounds like some of my USGS colleagues are hoping that this is going to be a sediment dive. Amanda and Jason Chater, who just spoke to us, both will be very happy to see this. And it will be interesting to see what the biota looks like here compared to the one that we dove on yesterday. And that was actually an intra-canyon ridge, so within a ridge system, where this is between canyons, and this one yesterday's was within, today is in between canyons.
Intra.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the Sirius view, you can see a nice bright red, probably mysid type crustacean in the water column. As well as some synaphobranchid eels.
And we did see red mysids yesterday.
They're pretty common occurrence in the water column.
And we also saw very numerous sea pens, or maybe not very numerous, but they were one of the dominant fauna. But the most abundant were the ophiuroids, and I don't see any of these ophiuroids in this first
Yeah, in our first view, it doesn't look to be stuffed full of them like much of the view yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But I doubt it will be long until we see one.
This is true. We're probably about 500 meters more shallow than we were yesterday. So depth could definitely help define what taxa we'll see.
Copy that. Once we're ready, I'll have a move in.
Potentially different brittle stars and different sea pens.
Right, yeah, usually they're that same group will be here. It's just the species might change out.
If we don't see carpets of brittle stars like we were seeing all throughout yesterday, it may say something about the depositional environment and how much material is landing on the bottom in this particular spot compared to the other one.
Yeah, so maybe not as much food hidden within those sediments.
Right, yeah, exactly. Not as much organic material overlying the bottom.
Very true. Or we're just going to see an entire army of crabs that has cleaned out the brittle stars. But I think what Scott brought up is more likely that whatever's falling down here, or there may be less falling down, or there's less organic material amongst what is falling down and settling on the seafloor. I feel like I see some sea pens off to the left, center left maybe, or I'm seeing things.
Remember that lower one is pointed inboard. Okay. All right, let's get the fish here rolling.
There's a rat tail. Is that, what is it? The
Nizumia is
Nizumia?
the common one. I'm not sure what species.
All right, come on out. And still the draw when you get a chance. Let's get the shrimp.
Oh, that's actually Nathaphausia. That's cool.
You can go tight.
So this red shrimp is, I'm pretty sure, in the genus Nathaphausia. It's a mysid. And the way you can tell it's Nathaphausia is this really long extension of the rostrum. That is probably a defensive feature, so they're harder to fit in the mouth of potential predator.
Bring it into 50 meters.
Copy.
They also have two relatively smaller spines on the back end of the carapace.
Okay, if you're both set up, you want to ship move?
Sure.
Okay. Start off with a 30 meters at 324 degrees.
Oh, we could probably ask them.
Video?
Or video would know. Ask video.
We'd like to call in a ship move of 30 meters at 324 degrees.
Go ahead.
Speed 0.2 knots, please. Good copy, Bridge. Thank you.
Is this the normal eel that we're seeing, or is this different?
Okay, let's come on out. Was someone talking to us on OKEX? Okay. Okay. That's all right. We are looking up a pretty steep slope here, Roland.
Yeah, they're the same way as they're usually set up.
So you can see how fine this sediment is and how easy it is to accidentally kick it up, especially when you're flying the ROV around steep slopes, changing. Pilot's survey.
Go ahead, survey.
Can we look at one of these red shrimp on the bottom here?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, let's get the little shrimp.
But yeah, actually I did think that looked like a halosaur. The fish that we looked at a few minutes ago in the water got good close-up of a halosaur, according to Ken Sulak.
This is going to be a fun day.
Do you know anything about these benthic shrimp? Oh, Scott says nematocarcinid shrimp? Three-legged shrimp?
Thread-legged.
Oh, sorry. That makes more sense. Thread-legged. I was like, it looks like it has more than 3 legs to me.
Let's get the little fish. Go ahead and roll.
Whoa. We're trying to follow this fish, but it's moving a little too fast for us. Oh, there's another Nathophausia mysid swimming by in the midwater. Oh, what's this? Oh, one of those tripod fish that's like safety cone colored.
Go ahead and roll.
Black and white.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen one that has that kind of coloration.
Oh, I thought we had early on in the cruise, like one of the earlier dives, but I could be.
All I remember is them being more black all the way
go tight
down their body. Wow, that's a beautiful
This one is like,
fish.
I mean, they're all pretty cool, but this one is even more disco than the others that we've been seeing.
Very impressive.
You can tell how rapid the current is going over this fish. He's just like, the fins are, woo. Or maybe that's from us.
I think that's probably from us.
There's a fair amount of current.
Okay, it's both.
Yeah.
Both high current and us.
So we're going to be looking at a lot of dust all day just because the current's
Copy that, Bridge.
coming from the aft going uphill.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
anytime I hit any dust, it's just going to fly into our face. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so we have Jim Matterson is with a group of high school students at Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute, and the students are interested in more information about the engineering behind the ROV. Specifically, how is it powered and remains functional throughout the entire dive?
All right, so this is the pilot, Josh Carlson. I'll do my best to answer this. I'm a mechanical engineer, so the electrical engineers on the team will have to forgive me if I get some of the details wrong. But the vehicle is powered from the ship, so we have a cable that goes down to Sirius, the camera platform, and Sirius, that the electricity goes down at about 3,000 volts, and then there's a transformer on Sirius that converts that voltage to lower voltages that we can use for all the different sensors. And then there's a tether that connects Sirius to D2, and that also brings power to D2. So basically we can stay down as long as the ship has diesel fuel and as long as the generators are running.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
Would you all like to introduce yourselves while we're waiting for the storm to pass?
Sure. This is Josh Carlson piloting D2, the ROV D2.
Sitting as co-pilot, I am Fernando Dragon.
Sitting as navigator is Lars Murphy.
In the far corner, just off behind the people on the other camera, is Roland Bryan doing video. And besides talking to you guys, we're actually also doing a live interaction with another class at a completely different area up at UNH.
So the tripod fish that we were just looking at, Ken Sulek was able to identify it as Bathopteros viridensis.
Okay, hold on.
Bathopteros viridensis.
I was asking if we wanted
That's
another
awesome,
ship
Ken.
move.
Thanks.
Shorter this time, though.
Yeah, can you come down a little bit, Fernando?
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
So we're seeing lots of fish here, both on the bottom, right above the bottom, and then more in the water column. And that looks like
a cusk eel?
Cusk eel, yeah. At first I thought it was an eel pout, but no, it looks more like a cusk eel.
Yeah, I'd say we're seeing more fish earlier than we saw yesterday, so that's exciting.
The brittle stars have been replaced by fish.
They're a little more charismatic than the brittle stars, that's for sure.
Don't let Leslie hear you say that. She loves the brittle stars.
Bridges is ROV now.
Except she was afraid to put her hand in the bucket and get him out of the bio box.
This is true.
At 324
she
degrees.
likes to admire them from afar.
0.2, please. Good copy.
Let's get this little fish here.
Ooh, I wonder if that's one of those
It's coming tight.
That's another halosaur.
net and chilies, I think, was one that we saw.
I like that name.
Me too. I'm not sure if that's it, but
it actually sounds like a food to me.
It does.
Maybe that's why I like it.
There's also something you just passed to the left now, a burrow, and there was something thin wiggling out of it. Maybe too far since we're following the fish, though.
Come in partial.
Something wiggling.
Oh, yeah, really small, like worm-like. It's that burrow that's almost just to the left of the lasers.
Okay. Let's investigate. Because I was paying attention to the fish, so I didn't see.
Some little
it's a little bit more
blackish thing.
It's coming.
Maybe it was the burrow above the one that's now off screen.
Okay. The blackish thing was the dark hole.
Right, come on out.
So wiggly thing bottom left.
There we go, that burrow. Fish is leading us right to it.
Come on in, Roland.
I think he must, he's got this one?
Yep, that's the one.
Oh,
There's something here on the left side. I don't know what it is, but caught my eye.
I think there's some tube worms and then possibly some mucus strings.
Yeah, maybe it was just a mucus string that when we moved over it, it got stirred up. But I think it's that tube-like thing that's sticking out. That's fine. Doesn't look like it's anything alive.
Okay.
I don't know. I think there was one tube worm that looked.
Yeah,
it could be somebody in there retracted, but.
Right, come on out.
Wow, what a steep surface this is. Lots of mud. And then Ken Sulak said that the fish we saw a few minutes ago that was drifting sideways was an ophidioid. Dicrolini Intranigra. Intranigra.
I've never seen
Here's
that
a little
before.
eel pout.
Oh, how adorable.
We saw some of these yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can.
Like Lycodes? Similar to a Lycodes? I'm sure someone ID'd it yesterday, but...
Yep, Lycodes terra novae.
Look at me knowing something about fish.
Great.
Woohoo.
Wait, it's coming up.
Man, there's fish everywhere.
It's definitely a fish dive. That's so far very exciting.
And I guess I need to correct myself based on contributions from the chat room. The red shrimp-like things in the water column, Gnathophausia, are not mysids. They're lophogastrids.
Or does yours go here?
Is this another one of those thread-legged? Although it looks slightly differently colored. Right here.
Well, the legs are certainly small enough to be another nematocarcinid, so that's what we go with. But I agree, it's a much lighter shade.
Yeah, and that, Scott, you would know more than I, but is there color variability within species, or does this indicate it's different species within the same genus? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the species designations. Color seems to be more important in the crustaceans than the corals for determining species, but I don't know enough about the nematocarcinidae. But I do know that the family, in part, is defined based on those really, really thin and long legs. They all have those extremely long antennae, as you saw there.
Good copy, Bridge. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Hold on the next move now, because this is pretty steep and I'm not moving the same way as the slope, so I want to get the slope right before we decide on for the next heading.
Copy that.
Let's do a snap right here.
Sorry, I thought you were going for the fish in the background. Some molt.
Like a crumpled up molt of something?
No, it looks like it has
Or
a tube
worm?
in the sediment. Not sure. I wouldn't guess worm, but then again, it is living in a tube.
It looks like it has a stalk, like it's one of those, like it fell over. There's a stalk going up to upper left.
I think it looks like a shrimp molt.
Oh, maybe it is a molt?
I think it might be a piece of a shrimp head. I think I see the antenna extending to the left.
Okay.
Pilot, I'm going to rotate a few degrees to my starboard side, just to acquire the slope a little bit better.
Okay, it's coming out.
There was a new fish at the top.
Let's do a snap here again.
Looks like more of it, more of the molt.
It's curious.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a part of a crustacean molt. You see, like the
I wonder if it actually
periopods
molted someplace else and then the currents just push it until it finds something that it wraps around.
It definitely had some sediment encrusted mucus hanging off of it.
That's lovely.
I know that.
I mean,
Oh, and here's
Could you
another.
tell from my voice that I was making a face?
Yeah. I'll confirm to everybody else. Okay, so this is
really
one of
small.
our
You can come in, Roland.
echinothurid urchins, I believe. We saw quite a few of these yesterday in this similar habitat.
It doesn't. I don't see that many of the puffed up hypodermic needle-like things. At least
there were
yet.
some that had those
that
and some
don't.
that didn't.
Oh, okay.
Maxim.
Maybe there's one in the back, on the back side. I don't know.
If it's the same one, it's Formosoma placenta.
Mm-hmm. And these are the pancake urchins, and they're called that because if you were to bring them up on the ship and take them out of the water, they evacuate all of the water inside, and their test is actually soft, and they'll just flatten
How you
out
guys doing?
like a pancake.
Welcome to the front row.
Thank you. Are we under move? Are we underway?
We are currently stopped.
Stop. Copy.
What's our total waypointage?
And you'd also want to be very careful handling one of these
Pilot
because they have
survey.
a venom.
Well, they gave us two. They said
That
they're
they
pretty
can inject
arbitrary.
it.
We're just climbing. So pretty much point me
Copy
down
that.
slope and I'll
No.
move you where you want to go.
Perfect. Your hydraulics are on. I'm not sure why. Maybe you were...
They were doing white balances pretty much as soon as we hit the bottom, so they may have been left over from that.
Okay. Great. I want to go ahead and secure.
And we're continuing up this very steep sedimented slope here.
So far, the slope seems to be at 3,
You don't
2,
see much
4,
evidence
so,
of
3, 2, 4. Copy.
the sand
that's where the moves have been
rolling
going.
down
Once you get pushed out a little bit, I'll go
or streaming
ahead and
down like
another.
you might in a sand dune, and that's
We've been
probably
doing
because
20-meter moves.
the
It seems to
clay
be enough
particles that are in
manageable
here make it a little
bite.
stickier.
Yeah, sounds
And
good.
some of this sediment
What's
on the surface
bailout
is very
today?
Bailout right now is
unconsolidated. The grains
northeast
aren't
at 070.
squished together, but underneath
Copy.
it's probably a little more
So pretty much having the ship
compacted.
come straight ahead.
It helps to
Great.
keep its shape on
Very
this slope.
soft sediment that's flying very easily. It was coming from behind you.
If this were coarser grain
Into the
material,
front
you'd see a
whenever
lot
disturbed.
more
Yeah, I was told not to.
of the material sliding
I was
down the
trying not
slope,
to kick up any sediment.
or
'cause
evidence
it'll
of
just
that. I don't think
blow
we'd
right in
actually
my
see
face.
it.
Yeah, it's been pretty messy down here this morning.
Where did you say the current was?
The sediment is very fine. I currently do not know with my sensors. The ADCP
Sure.
is down.
But I was saying, are we seeing it? Is the tether been looking like this mostly?
Yes.
Okay,
So it
great.
seems to be going from
Have you seen this
west to
fish
east.
today yet, Watchlights?
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Copy that. Moving on.
I'm ready for a move, actually. I've got you at 30.
Copy
Tilt
that.
tilt
Whenever
up.
you are, pilot. You want to get with nav?
Yeah. No, I'm ready. Whatever you guys want.
Excellent. Another
Is that a
20 meters at
xenophilophore?
324.
3.
Or a pile of
Okay, copy that.
something.
Bridge is in Army now.
Some more
Sediment?
sargassum, perhaps.
Outhouse?
Would like to have
Pile of
another
sediment?
move. Same
Yes,
thing. 20 meters at
Deep sea outhouse.
324 degrees. Speed 0.2 knots, please.
You can see traces of where
Good copy, Bridge. Thank
animals
you.
have burrowed, and the excavated material is that lighter color. This is just downslope of the excavation. Seems to be a lot more of the sargassum piles here, if that's what we're seeing on the floor.
And we were talking before with Jason Chater, and then Ken
Copy that.
Sulak also points this out, that today's dive is a very good counterpoint or comparison to yesterday's dive. Most of the dives we've done have targeted hard substrate habitat, and we've been targeting sponges and corals and all the other fauna that is found usually in those habitats, but those types of habitats don't have as much fish food as a place like this. And so it's good to see both types of habitats. And a hermit crab.
Any interest, Washleads?
We can just get a little more of a zoom, maybe, and move on.
Video take resume.
And he's wearing an anemone instead of a gastropod shell, as most hermit crabs do, and we've been seeing that very often out here.
Is it two anemones or one folded over?
I don't know. It looked like there might have been two.
It looked like one on either side, but it's hard to tell.
He's running away.
Just like the one yesterday that kind of like tried to launch itself off the sediment and go.
Sorry, I had my mic off. Bottom edge just went off screen. Pink. Could have been another one of those, or it could have been an octopus. Still backwards. Just at the bottom lip of the screen.
Snap it.
Tube anemone or something? No.
Did you come partial?
Like, or is it like a zoanthid?
I wonder if it's a flabellum cup coral.
Partial.
They live in sedimented areas.
All right, come in. Video you can take. Yeah, got it.
Or maybe it's a crab on the left.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
crab with an anemone on
hermit,
it.
Yeah.
Actually, it looks like a lithodid crab, though.
Yeah.
That does look like a coral, though. I see the septa underneath, so maybe it's just a crab tucked under a flabellum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Well, that would be a new one for me.
This would add to the connectivity studies.
Yeah,
of the corals.
The list of associated.
Have we seen corals with that large of a mouth before, or opening?
Yeah, this flabellum species, if that's what it is, which is one of the only ones that I know that can survive in this kind of very sedimented habitat, but they're really narrow at the base and then they get wide, and I've seen them up to about 3 inches, maybe 4 inches across, so maybe. But that's a very interesting association, too, with the crab.
All right, you can come wide. Should we get lasers on it?
I think this must just be the angle. The crab just must be tucked under there and not attached to it in any way, is my guess.
Yeah, that's what I would guess also.
Is the flabellum just anchored in the sediment, or does that mean there's a rock underneath the sediment it's attached to?
It can settle on the tiniest little thing. So if you look at the base, it is microscopic, like
they really do.
Down. So they do need something to settle on, but it can be seriously really like a little pebble.
Okay. Yeah, you can see it better from this angle. Like it's just.
Oh, yeah. And we collected several flabellum during the Mid-Atlantic Canyons project, so that's how I got to learn about them a bit. And the genus is very widely distributed. There's some in Antarctica.
All All right.
Nice.
You can follow me back. We'll come center, co-pilot.
Copy.
And while we're cruising along, want to shout out to the Cortez Lab, who had a front page article in the New York Times today about deep sea corals, and I actually didn't get to read the whole thing yet because of our bandwidth.
And they didn't deliver on Tuesdays.
Yeah, they don't. The newspaper man didn't come by. But wow, deep sea corals on the front page of the New York Times. And
starring Alexis Swenning, who has been on our chat room. She might even be here now. Nope, she is not. But she has joined us on several occasions.
Copy.
White star going off.
They probably delivered it to the Pamlico Deep site, but we weren't there any longer. It moved.
That's right.
Sorry for jinxing it.
And that group is from Temple University. Congratulations.
And Eric is the science lead on the Deep Search project, which is also a multi-agency project that's going to be going on for the next several years in this very area. So that project is benefiting from the ground truthing and mapping and everything else that we're doing on this cruise.
Partly buried sea star.
Huh.
All right, Leslie, you're our resident echinoderm expert now.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's sad, isn't it?
No, it's great.
No, I'm sad that I'm your expert. So, yes, this is one of the cookie cutter types, it looks like. It may well be a goniaster. Oh, maybe not. No, I see it's limbs.
The arms are, the arms are buried.
I was just looking at the place. See, there goes my expertise. So, hard to tell. And maybe we'll get Chris Ma to call in.
Biologist in training, Leslie.
Yes.
The arms actually lifted.
Maybe a wannabe biologist. I don't know.
I don't think I've ever seen a sea star buried like this.
So I see them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that co-pilot?
Well, it also could be that some of the sediment from above just tumbled down on it. We disturbed a little bit of sediment. Not that we necessarily did it, but little areas of this seem to detach. It's so steep here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he has.
Whenever you're happy.
Not the cookie cutter type, just that little central area looked like one though.
And let's take off. All right, Copilot, so...
Swimming thing coming near lasers.
Yeah, copy.
She'll tell us.
Go for, ooh.
Well, it's nothing to do with us. You can lose him.
Yeah, he's... Next time. Do we have an idea what surface current's doing?
Not very many brittle stars today.
We currently don't. The ADC
certainly not here. Even on the steeper slopes yesterday, we saw plenty of them distributed all across the sediment and not at all clumped.
Gotcha.
They were overly dispersed. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Hey, sir.
Hey, Chris. Did you get a look at the sea star that was partially buried?
I did.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, being partially buried precludes a complete identification, but that's what's called a Paxillocidin, probably in the Astropectinidae. Basically, these are mud stars. They're a group that we haven't actually seen yet on these cruises, but they're based on the specimens that I've seen. They're widespread throughout this area. They're probably just buried or hiding. These are unique among the sea stars in that they have pointed tube feet, and they'll often conceal themselves by burying themselves under the subsurface of loosely consolidated sediment. They lack a pyloric stomach, so they will actually swallow rather than kind of absorb food. And so what they often do is they bury into the sediment, and they'll just engulf massive clumps of sediment and devour what's in them. So anything from forams to clams, mussels, or not mussels, but bivalves, any kind of deep-sea gastropod that might be present in the mud or sediment, and they'll digest them. And so oftentimes you'll see sort of star-shaped outlines in the mud or sediment where these are present. In the Pacific, we saw a couple of these. They can get to be quite large. And oddly enough, sometimes they just sort of get up on their own and start walking around. They can be surprisingly fast movers, but they have, like I said, sort of different tube feet. They have pointed tube feet rather than suckered tube feet. So they're surprisingly fast movers. This is the same group of sea stars to which, I think everybody for some reason saw that kind of Lewidia that was stranded on the beach. This is the same group that sea star belongs to. They're found in shallow waters sometimes, but they're also in sediments as deep as, I think the record is something like 2,000 to 3,000 meter depth. So this could be any number of genera, but
and the Lewidia are quite aggressive too. The Lewidia and the shallows, just like these, they are very mobile, and the Lewidia are quite aggressive from what I've seen with other sea stars.
North?
Yes. Oh, yeah, they're very active when food comes around. But these are largely, I guess it depends on whether you put the emphasis on sort of the sediment part or the predatory part of their life mode. But we'll definitely, in this kind of habitat, it's not unusual to see the star-shaped burrows and to see them sort of half buried a lot of times. So, but it's always nice to see one just sort of in situ, half buried like that, so we could see the outline and so forth.
And Paxillicidin, you said.
And
Paxillicidin.
Yeah, mud stars probably.
Okay. Just rotate a little bit.
But Paxillocida.
Right.
That's the genus. Okay, great. Thank you.
No, that's the order name.
The order. Okay.
The larger group.
That'd be great.
It's hard to give you a genus for something.
That's
like
okay.
This,
I just wanted to make sure I had it down if we see another one. I just wanted to have it written down if we see another one, and for our
am I getting ahead of you?
people on C-Scribe.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. But
whatever your guys are comfortable.
Anyway, if there's a better one that comes up, I'll call in again and see what I can do with a better name. So.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. As always.
I'm always appreciative. Thank you.
What's the waypoint?
Thanks very much.
The
waypoint
is a bearing of 321 or 323.
That was Chris Mott from the Smithsonian Institution.
So actually, did you guys happen to see that worm thing
and
sticking
again,
up?
the waypoints are pretty arbitrary.
Some more of
we
those
really
burrow,
just want to follow
the mounds left after burrowing.
If the slope's still
we saw a lot of this yesterday and never discovered whose mounds these are.
310 and 325.
Okay. I will call in 324. Then
just now or back with the seagrass and stick?
Bridges is ROV nav. Would like to make another move, 20 meters.
Yeah, I saw the worm.
324 degrees, speed 0.2, please. Good copy, Bridge. Thank you.
And so we're seeing several really dark fishes, and we zoomed in on those. And Ken Sulak has identified those as Dicrolini intranigra. They're benthic feeding fishes, and they have long sensory fin rays. So if you saw those little barbly-looking things on their chins.
Let's give a big
video star. Seats tend to trap heat. Because it was freezing this morning. All trader shirts. Give her this.
Pilot, there was another sea star that we just passed on the left.
Yeah, I saw
upper left.
I can go that way.
There's a partially buried one and one that is at the surface.
Do you want to see both, or just go towards the unburied one? Or?
So this may well be another of the mud stars that we just saw that Chris Ma gave us some information about.
So go to the unburied one, is that correct?
These are the mud dwellers. I don't know. Certainly the one under the mud is likely that, but we haven't seen its full body revealed to know if it looks like this on top of the mud. Wow, look at those. These are interesting tubes at the ends of the arms.
Down. Yeah, there you go.
It's hard to see if the tube feet are pointed. They're down in the mud. They're very elongate. That would help them get up off the mud surface.
Or down.
You can see them working the sediments there.
Yeah, they are pointed. Look at that. See that one in the upper left, retracting. And these tube feet are propelled by their water vascular system.
Let's go for a full screen. Seem to be unable to light that one very well.
It's regrowing one of its arms over on the right.
Yes,
oh,
it is,
the
yeah.
tip, yeah.
Great. Thanks, pilot.
All right, video, whenever you're happy. And watch it. Did you want to see the partially buried one too? Or just move on?
Let's look at the partially buried one. I think that Chris Ma is calling in, and he'll probably want to see that. So,
copy
if
that.
that's not
Hi, thanks again.
Another one at the top of the screen,
They've just
too.
called in and called out like that.
They're all over.
Yeah, so this is definitely a classic representative of the mud stars that I was talking about. I'm trying to look it up because there's there's so many of them. This one could be either either Plutonaster or Dipsocastor. And these are so that's about 10 centimeters across. So that's also quite a sizable animal. These are usually found when we collect them, their guts are filled with mud, as I indicated with the others. And they're usually filled with
from port quarters.
Again, for the potential food stuff that's present. Sometimes there are forams, sometimes there are small gastropods, or even small bivalves. And so these often eating those. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So now you're
thought you'd like that. We knew you hadn't seen it yet.
We've got some action.
Wow, yeah, so you're now seeing a classic view of the tube feet, the pointed tube feet. It looks like it's excavating itself from the mud.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is just some beauty. That is some lovely, lovely video. Oh, man.
Yeah, when we crossed over it earlier, he was still and in the mud, and so when we just moved in on him for the zoom, he was in that position of climbing out of the mud.
Looks like we found a star.
And Chris, did you say something about the tube feet at the end of the arms? They're like more normal tube feet compared to the pointed ones.
It's okay. He's got
well,
yeah.
The ones at the tips are probably being used as a kind of sensory cluster. I mean, they're probably helping it move around. I mean, sort of sense what and where it's going.
As he moves,
there's definitely a large number of them.
We can move on. Thanks, that was great.
All right.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in that image. There are, for example,
I only heard you because I had
we saw the tube feet with the pointed ends. And I'm sorry, did you?
No, we were just giving instructions, but no, we're going to stick around a little bit because he's now raising his other arm to excavate
should I stay
himself.
Here, Watch Leads?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. you'll see it in a few seconds.
I've never seen one of these deep sea things do this, so this is really a treat.
It's great. They lift it up and knock the sediment off and do it probably arm by arm.
It's almost like it's sort of waking up in the morning.
Stretching itself. Pushing off the covers.
So these kinds of sea stars have been around for a long time, and they're predisposed to be made into fossils because, of course, they live in sediment, and quick burial is one of those factors which enhances the chance of something being fossilized. So this looks a lot like Plutonaster to me. And so this is one of the widespread genera of mud stars that occurs across the Atlantic and the Pacific.
What kind of healing factor they would have versus,
but it's a nice, large animal. It's got the spines around the edge, which, from what I've seen of these mud stars, those spines are usually flattened. So even though they look more like sort of defensive structures, I think they assist just as easily in helping them dig. And move around in the sediment. You'll notice, too, how there's a sort of a fine texture along the surface, and those are what's called paxilla. And it's thought that the paxilla kind of keep all of the sediment at the top surface and permit all of the papilla, all of the gills, which are just below that, sort of an extra corridor to respire. So there's actually kind of if you will, a forest of plates that holds up a false surface on the top, and then and then the gills are on the actual surface of the animal, right at the base of these trees of plates on the top, and so that's how they can stay buried and continue to respire. The water kind of flows between the plates, which are so they can get into the gills that are protected by these paxilla. There's a whole host of interesting things that these animals do. Just in spite of just sort of this sort of life mode where because there's so many of them and they're buried in the sediment, and it's interesting to look at how they interact with other animals that live there. I see now we're coming on a brittle star. If it's like the ones we saw yesterday, it would be Ophiomusa limani, maybe. Okay, I can't see it, the plates from here, but again, it's sort of a pretty commonly encountered resident of this kind of habitat. Anyway, that was really neat. Appreciate stopping. I get the impression you'll probably see a few more of these as we go along, but I think the ones that you'll see are these big ones with the spiny edges. They'll probably be in the genus Plutonaster, and I believe that's named after Pluto, the god of the underworld. So, so you basically have since they live in the abyss, this is an appropriate name for them.
Would you like another move, co-pilot and pilot?
Yeah, whatever you got to do to keep us on track, I'm happy with.
Copy that. Another 20 meters.
Chris, if you're still there, there's a question from some students who are
same thing,
following along with the dive, and they're wondering if there's a limit to the number of times that sea stars can regrow their arms, and if that regeneration shortens their lifespan.